So hello everybody. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how we can end up creating code that will generate psychedelic artwork like this. So as you can imagine, this is using a nested while loop, and so we're going to be giving you the breakdown for this code and how to implement this. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the turtle module, so I'm going to go ahead and import turtle as t in this case. Now what we can end up saying is painter. This is going to create a turtle instance, right? So we can do t.turtle with a capital T for the turtle. What I'm also going to end up doing is I'm going to set the speed equal to 0 so that it's going to be the fastest speed setting. Okay, so as you'll remember, 0 is the fastest, 9 is the second fastest, and 1 is actually the slowest. Remember, this is creating a turtle instance. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to first focus on just creating a single component of this, and so what I'm going to focus on is creating the actual square. So as you can imagine, we can use a while loop. So while sides is less than 4. Okay, so that's going to be the case. What I'm going to also do is I'm going to set sides equal to 0 here at first. Okay, so while sides is less than 4, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to tell our painter, oops, sorry, and we also got to go up here. This should be painter.speed. So painter.forward. So FD, remember, means forward. We're going to go forward that size, and then what we're going to do is we're going to tell it painter go right, so RT, 90 degrees. And then what I need to do, anytime we're using the while loop, remember we're starting off where it's equal to 0, right? Then what we want to do is we want to increment sides by 1. If we don't increment sides by 1 at the end here, we're going to be stuck in that infinite loop because sides will always be equal to 0. Line 12 here, that's telling us sides plus 1 equals 1. That's saying it's going to increment by 1. Okay. So now let's go ahead and let's put in our code to actually create the window. So we're going to go t.screen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do wn.exit on click. So I'm going to do it instead of the main loop. So let's go ahead and let's run our code. Let's see what we got cooked up so far. So as we can see, we got our code. Perfect. And we created our single square, right? Now, what's going to end up happening after this is we're going to end up having those next iterations, right? So this square is created, and then what we're going to do is we're going to actually rotate our turtle just a little bit, right? By 5 degrees is what we're going to end up doing, and that's going to kind of create that cool drift, especially as we're increasing the size. So it's going to kind of create that perception as well, that depth perception, that these squares the square that we first created is the furthest away, right? And it's continuing on where it's getting closer and closer to us. Okay, so what we always want to be focusing on is creating first the inner while loop. So that's exactly what we just did. Now what we want to do is we want to create the code that's going to be continuously repeated, right? And so just as we said, the size needs to be incremented each time, and I'm going to increment it by 15 pixels. And then also what we want to do is we want to tell the painter, hey, go right 5 degrees, right? So that's going to cause that slight rotation, and it's going to create cool drift. So we're going to say that slight rotation creates a cool drift, right? So now if we run this again, we can end up seeing this. And so just as we see here, we have the slight rotation end up going through there. We also ended up incrementing the size by 15. And so now that's going to happen every single time, right? And so what we can do now is we can take all of this code, right? We take all of this code, we can end up going right here. And then what we could do is we could set a limit to this, right? So we could do while, and then what I can do is I can end up using while. Now, different ways we can go about this. We could set a limit on the actual size here, right? So we could say while the size is less than or equal to 300, or we could say while squares is less than, let's say we want to have 12 of them created, right? Well, what I can do now is I can create the loop variable squares. So I'm going to set that equal to 0. Now, at the very, very end of this, right, it's just like whenever we had the while sides was less than 4, right? We started off with sides being equal to 0. Then we had to increment it every time, right? Otherwise, we'd be stuck in that infinite loop. It's going to be the same case here. Line number 8, we have the while loop begin. Squares equal to 0, and then what we see is that squares just remain 0 the entire time. Now this could end up being pretty cool too, because this will end up infinitely looping. And so if I end up showing you this, we'll see that this is just going to continue on and just keep going and keep going and keep going, and it'll continue as long as we are actually running this, right? Well, that's not what we want to end up doing. What we want to do is we want to set a limit to this, and so what we're going to do is we're going to set it so that there's 12 squares total created, right? So now what I got to do at the end of this is I got to put squares plus equals 1. Now that's going to increment each time so that it'll keep count of how many squares we've drawn out, and at the end it's going to stop after there's 12 squares created. So if we end up going in here, we can run this. Now, as you can see, we've got that. Now, I do want to end up getting this so that basically I want to try to have this where this guy is going straight down here, right? So we're starting at 90 degrees. So let's actually do a little calculation here. So if we need to cover 90 degrees, 90 divided by 5 means we should have 18 iterations. So instead of drawing 12 squares, let's do 18 squares. So let's go ahead, let's run this. Nice, and so this looks like we need to do one more actually in here, so I'm gonna put 19 that way so that this will be entirely horizontal here for this last one. So let's go ahead and put 19 on here, and then let's run this. And so now, awesome, we created our artwork, our psychedelic art. So that's how we end up creating this little square continuance that's kind of got a cool drift, also this perception sense in here. We end up using this code, and so this is how we end up cooking that up. Remember, anytime you're dealing with nested while loops, you always want to focus on first just creating the actual action that is going to be repeated a lot of times, right? So we ended up starting off with just this code, and then what we ended up doing is after we got that first instance that's repeated, then we can end up indenting that. Remember, I highlighted that. If you press tab, that will indent all of that. And then what we can do is we can create that outer loop. So this was while squares is less than 19. You need to initialize what the squares value is, and then you've got to increment that. Otherwise, you're going to be caught in that infinite loop. Anyways, hope this video was helpful. Hope you guys are creating some very cool artwork. Catch you all in the next video. Bye-bye.